It's okay if I drink water while we do it.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, you're all like dressed up.
Okay, so welcome. This is our IPD conference that we're going to go through, and I gave you the planning paper. Maybe I'll just move it over here for both of us to have. Kind of the planning paper that we're kind of going to go through. During our observation and our post-conference that we had, we kind of talked about an 80% comprehension goal for literacy. So I want to, for your IPDP, kind of dig in a little bit deeper to that goal and how we can make it more into a SMART goal format. So I've listed some of the SMART goal, some of the questions that I'm going to ask here. So I'm just going to go ahead and go through it. So tell me about how you guys got to the your PLC. How did you get to the 80% comprehension as a group?
Well, right now, district-wide, our goal is to increase student learning, to utilize the skills that students have and provide that path so that they can reach achievement. So obviously our focus is going to be the 80% proficiency. That's kind of our mark that we want to reach for. And right now we've realized, in discussion, we realized that comprehension was still an area that students were struggling in because of the way the Journeys tests are set up. And the I guess, restraints in time. We have 1 week to teach this lesson, and it is full of daily things. Great resources, but it really pushes students, and it pushes them sometimes in an area where ones who are struggling or need a little bit more time, we just don't have that time available. So our focus was to how do we get those students up, to the 80% proficiency. And that's kind of, like I said, that's the district goal, is to reach that 80%. So we were trying to target that.
Okay, perfect. So you want to accomplish the 80% proficiency in comprehension. So who is going to help you? Who is going to help you accomplish this goal? So you have yourself. You have the students. What other resources do you feel that you need to accomplish this goal?
Okay. We have our Journeys curriculum, and then we're kind of with the Journeys curriculum this year. This is our second year of teaching Journeys.
Second or third.
Yeah. So with that, I knew that this year I do have a very small class, but I knew that I was going to have to kind of tweak and fine-tune my small groups in order to really, really give students that extra time that they needed. So tweaking my small groups, getting it to be aligned a little bit more with Journeys, that instead of just our book clubs, we're actually doing Journey curriculum as well. So we may be touching on theme or visualization or summarizing. All of that's going to be in with our small groups as well, but it's part of our Journeys curriculum. So Journeys curriculum, tweaking my small groups. I also implemented a win time in my lessons as well, and that's going to give me a little bit more time to pull friends who are still struggling with some of our strategies and skills that we want, and still struggling with reaching that 80% proficiency. So I pull them back, just for independent time or individual intervention. But I title it Win What I Need. So whatever they're needing, that's what I'm going to pull them back, and that's what we're going to focus on. So, and I can utilize our Journeys curriculum in that as well. So with all of that, it is giving me a little bit more time to really ensure that those students who are needing that extra time are getting that, and plus making sure that we are fully comprehending what we're reading.
Okay, perfect. So those were kind of some of the specific questions that I wanted to ask about the goal.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing I want to know is how are we going to measure when this is accomplished, when the 80% is reached?
We have a Excel spreadsheet that we've created as our PLC group, and with that, we just simply have to plug in the numbers, and it's going to provide us with our percentage. So each week, on a weekly basis, I will be able to see where I have fallen, and specifically maybe what students have fallen below that mark, and then it kind of gives me a direction of what I need to do to redirect or even reteach, or even how I need to implement the following week's lesson. Maybe there's a pattern that we see where each week we're struggling in this area, so that I know how to redesign, my lessons so that I can accommodate those students.
Okay. And so my next question was, how are you going to ensure the success? But we have already kind of talked about how you're going to ensure the success. You're going to use the Journey's curriculum, mm-hmm. and you're going to use book clubs, your small groups, and your win time.
Yes.
And then you're going to review that spreadsheet. You said weekly. Mm-hmm. You guys can do you go in and put in the scores?
I do, and we each put in our own student scores, so we've got it broke down to where we can do that. And then when we meet as a PLC group, then we're going over that data to see if there's any patterns. Basically, our focus is, if we're noticing patterns, then we should be able to help fill those gaps, so that we're not having gaps going from grade level to grade level. So if I notice that fourth graders are still struggling with this one skill or this one strategy as a whole, then I know that I've got to add more time for them to practice in my curriculum. Plus, it's also great information for the next teacher, for fifth grade, so that they can see this data and they can see what they're going to have to do in order to accommodate those students that are coming up.
Okay, that's perfect. So, I want to talk about, so the district goal is to improve student learning, and so this is going to support the district agenda. Can you tell me how you think that will support the agenda?
Well, if we can ensure that, I think our goal was 70% of our students are achieving that 80%. So if we can reach that level, then we're hitting those targeted students, but more importantly, we're ensuring that students are getting what they need to get out of our Journey's curriculum. So they're not just passing the test, so to speak, but they're getting those skills that are going to carry through, throughout graduation. So doing that, it's going to ensure if I have a strong core in fourth grade, then they're going to be just as strong in fifth grade and sixth grade and so forth. So then you are ultimately ensuring that students are getting a better education. They're understanding things better.
Good. So you talked about, I heard you say you want to see 70% are achieving that comprehension. So how can we put that into how can we add that onto our existing goal to help make it just a little bit deeper? Do you think we could add it to 80% of the students are scoring 70% on comprehension overall, or for just your class?
Well, I think our goal would be that we want them to score 80% or above, because that's going to be a B area.
Tell me, what does that mean, a B area?
I'm sorry. So if you do your letter grade, so A, B, C, so it would be a B.
Okay.
It's going above that 75% mark, which is usually the cutoff. So we want to make sure that we're getting them up to the 80%. If they're scoring 80%, then they are showing fluency, they're showing comprehension, they're showing text structures, they are showing the ability to decipher vocabulary. So in essence, we're creating students who are able to comprehend what they're reading. They're building stronger vocabulary. They're building stronger spelling skills. So all of that is everything that they will need in order to become, to join the workforce, so to speak. So if we're doing that, if we're getting that 80%, then we're reaching that mark. If right now we set it at 70% because we also we factored in students who were on IEPs and students who needed accommodations for those tests. So that's why we reached that 70%. I would like it to be higher, and I think eventually it can be. But then again, if we're doing the students an injustice, because if we're forcing everyone to be that 80%, some of them cannot do that yet. Yet is a key word. So, and we understand as long as we're targeting that 80% and 70% of students hitting that 80%, then we're going to hit the bulk of our class. Plus, we're also accommodating students who need that extra time. Then that way they can successfully learn at their own pace, and they're not, at the same level as students.
Good.
Because they're just not ready for that yet.
Okay, so could we say 80% of the grade level students will score 70% on comprehension? Is that, or do you want to say or 80% of the 4th, 5th, 6th students will score 75%? Do we want to up it to 75?
Well, technically
or are we switching those numbers?
Yeah.
The numbers are switched.
So yeah, the numbers are switched. So we want to hit that 80%. I would like to move it up to where 75% of our students are hitting 80%.
75%.
Because then that's 3/4 of each class, which I think if we can hit that, then those are better numbers. Good. In my opinion.
No, I agree.
I really think that, if we can move it up to 75%, yes. I think originally, like I said, we were factoring in students who had IEPs, students who needed different accommodations, but we could still factor that in. It's just going to be at their pace.
So 75% are hitting 80% of the
Yeah, because our focus is at 80%. We definitely want to keep that.
So how often will you look? Are you using every week, every 4 weeks, every 2 weeks?
We originally our PLC goal was to have them achieve this for 4 consecutive weeks. So in a month's time, we've reached that goal. When we were going to revisit, then we were going to adjust that, because we think if we can get that gap to decrease a little bit, then we can start decreasing it even more. So then we would lower that a little bit. So then I would say on a bi-weekly, every 2 weeks, they should be able to hit that, because it shows that they're picking up the skills, because this is our 2nd or 3rd year. They really have been introduced with these skills. We should be closing those gaps, and we're noticing that we weren't, so we knew that we had to really begin to fine-tune what we were doing and targeting where that gap is and how do we minimize that.
Okay, so I'm hearing you say we could start your goal for 75% are hitting 80% comprehension.
Yes.
And you are assessing this bi-weekly, so every other week.
We assess it weekly, but as a group, we would meet together to talk about it bi-weekly. Because we noticed that there's a lot of factors in these tests, depending on what the story is. If it didn't gain student interest, then we've noticed we're seeing patterns that, depending on the story, the scores decreased because they weren't interested in the story. We didn't pique their interest. So then we have to start thinking outside that box, and what do we do to pique their interest with the story? How can I make the story more exciting? Or how can I pull from their interest, how can I get them to get these skills? And that's something that we have already addressed.
So on your spreadsheet that you do, is it just your journeys assessments that you put on there?
Yeah, we have journeys and vocabulary, because those two go hand in hand. Spelling not so much, but the vocabulary definitely is something that we notice they're needing some help on.
Okay. Well, I think that we have a really good starting point. So I kind of want to talk about just a time frame do you feel that we can get? Do you think that this time frame is the 40% by a certain month is too low of a start point?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
What would be? Let's say that we want to get this to the end of May. So what would be the what do you think your starting point is kind of right now?
Well, I think right now we're focusing on the 70%, and we're seeing that we're achieving that.
Okay.
So I think we need to increase that, because I think realistically we wanted to be at the 75% or beyond by the end of the school year. Then that way we're factoring in summertime, but then that way they're not so far behind whenever they start the next school year. So if we can reach 75%, and that's IEP, that's every student in your classroom at 75%, reaching the 80% proficiency, then if we can do that by the end of May, then I think we're where we need to be.
Great. Well, I think that we have a really good plan in place. What I'm going to do is I am going to, we're kind of at the end of the month right now, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to check back in with you guys at your next PLC to kind of see how the data is going for grade level, and then after that day, because we meet on Wednesdays, you and I can get together and talk about how your individual plan is going.
Okay.
Does that sound okay?
Yes, that's perfect.
I was looking for Rebecca.
She's at the DARE dance.
Oh, I didn't know it was for her. So much fun.
Yeah.
Thank you.